Overtime here at Old Favorite Friday, and I brought in head brewer Joel Codner, good friend of mine, to talk about La Folie from New Belgium. Now, when we were talking about doing this video, one of the first things I said is it's time to basically insult and be aggressive towards smoothie sours, and you said I've already done that today. So you said you were going to pass on that. I was joking, obviously, in that I think there's definitely a place for that style, but I don't think you can talk about a beer like this, which is advertised and known as being the first mixed culture beer produced commercially in the United States. I don't think you would talk about mixed culture beer in 2022 without putting the difference between a mixed culture beer and a quickie sour, overly fruited marshmallow sour. I mean, that's what most people know when they talk about sour beers these days, whether you're in the craft beer industry like a beer nerd or you're just on the periphery. This is the antithesis of that. This is what I love. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when it comes to this beer, and I know I've told you this in the past, for me, great beers are not only about the beers themselves, but also the experience. And I've been very lucky to be at both New Belgium facilities in Colorado and Asheville. I've gotten to try this on draft at Fort Collins during GABF week, playing ping pong and listening to old school hip hop and this whole setup they had, and it was one of the best days of my life. And I was drinking this, and it was just I'll take that memory with me forever. So this is one of those beers that when it gets proposed for Old Favorite Friday, I'm just like, duh, like, yeah, of course. Like, why wouldn't we?
How have we not done this before, basically?
Right. And there may be a lot of people who are only too familiar with New Belgium's mainstream stuff, like Fat Tire or Voodoo Ranger, and not that there's anything wrong with those, but, they have an incredible sour program. I've been through their foeder forest. I mean, it is top notch. And I've had, I've been really lucky to speak to, some of the people that work for them and that are on their creative teams and get some inside info on how they do certain things. And the level of intent that they put into everything. I mean, there is not a single ingredient that just gets thrown in because of whatever. They're never trying to do anything because they think, oh, we'll just add more and that'll make the beer. It's like, no, every single element is carefully thought out and how it's going to affect everything, and it all ties into the processes and everything they do. So, this is beyond stellar. Like, I don't need to trash a quickie smoothie sour to complement this, because this just shines on its own.
That's a good way to put it. And I'm also very biased when it comes to this, for one of the reasons is being in New Belgium and trying beers out of foeders, and the love and the amount of attention that we were given when we went there. But also, we're a partner with Odd Breed Wild Ales that does mixed fermentation, all barrel aged, all real fruit when fruit is used. So I'm definitely I have a preference to this version of a sour beer, of the classic way of doing it. And there, as I said in the beginning of this video, there's a place for those other beers. They don't tickle my fancy so much because I feel that they can be a little bit one-dimensional, and sometimes that dimension is really tasty, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think when you put this up against those beers that they lack a little bit of depth, because they are not, the time that goes into them, the malt bill, kind of the build from ground up is so intentional in the way that you're saying that. And I think it's one of these beers that you could sit here as this unfolds, as it warms, and as it ages, and taste something different every time you go back to it. And I just want to promote that. I want to promote people, if you love sour beers, or you just got into sour beers and you got into it on what is kind of the flavor of the week or the flavor of the month, the flavor of the year, you might really love this. You might get into this and go, wow, I didn't know that this was also available. And New Belgium is a great example, and they're all over the country. I mean, obviously I have a preference to Odd Breed, and please go try that, but there's tons of other breweries doing this kind of stuff.
Right, and the funny thing about this beer to me is that it's kind of ironically intentionally infected, but remarkably clean. It's not something that's giving off those off flavors or aromas of like the baby vomit and all the different kind of unwanted acids that might come with a kettle sour, or just, as we know, some breweries will just throw acid in it, just to a regular beer, and that adds no complexity. You get none of the flavor of the wood from the foeders or anything like that. So it's remarkable how well crafted it is for something that you kind of just hope for the best at a certain point. You know, you've got it in a foeder, it's inoculated, and you know you're hoping you get everything you want out of it. So to me, it's a real crowning achievement.
And blending is so much a part of this,
Yes.
which I don't think people realize, is the blending to make this beer consistent from year to year, but also makes it a little bit unique in that way. And that's the thing with a beer like this, is that you kind of hit the nail on the head. All flavors are so hard to keep out when you're working with lactobacillus and pediococcus and brettanomyces. They're really, really difficult. One of the things that I thought as I was opening this bottle, I was not at all worried that it was going to foam over on me. I was not at all worried that there was going to be a ton of unfermented sugars, that the bottling condition yeast would eat and it would be all over the place. I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't worried about the off flavors or oxidation that you see in a lot of the sour beers that are made in the United States and all over the world, because the intention that went into it, the time and energy, and the skill, the pure skill to do this style. And this is not a style that Barrel Monks does a lot of. We do a few sours here or there. And I'm proud of the beers that you produce and that we produce out there, but I don't know if there's is another style of beer that you need more skill to brew well than this, right?
Yeah, and they're intensely quality focused. They have the labs at their facilities and they're being utilized. I mean, you made a great point about not worrying about any sort of off flavors or explosions or foaming, and you know, that's just one of those kind of guarantees that I really know and look for in certain brands, whether it's New Belgium, Sierra Nevada, those kind of places. It's kind of a guarantee that you're going to get something good.
Yeah. Listen, I love this beer, and I mentioned it on the story vid. This isn't the easiest beer to find, so you've got to go to your specialty craft beer place. I'm not sure what the seasonality of this is. I literally was going to pick out a beer for Old Flavor Friday. It was on the shelf, and I said, bang, that's got to be the beer for this week. But grab a bottle of this. This beer will age extremely well, and try other beers from their souring program. And if you go out and you find a mixed culture brewery, give those beers a shot. Wherever that they're local breweries to you, give them a try and look at some of these beers that are unfruited, no adjuncts, and you're just getting that pure flavor. There's chocolate in here, and there's stone fruit, and all these great flavors. It's coming from the malt, it's coming from the fermentation. That's what Odd Breed's, one of their slogans is flavor from fermentation. And it's real. This is a real thing that adds so much complexity. It's why these beers have been so sought out for generations, right? Much love to New Belgium, much love to this beer that really kicked off our love of sour beers and has made it possible for breweries in the United States to do them. And we hope to see you back again on Old Flavor Friday. Cheers.
Cheers.